So I'm Yona Verwer of the Jewish Art Salon, and thank you all for attending and you all for presenting. We're very excited with this special edition about the Jerusalem Biennale, which I personally think is one of the most important events in Jewish art. So we're thrilled to have you all here. The salon itself was not participating as an organization, but 18 of our members, that is to say 17 artists and a curator, were part of the Biennale. So giving it back to Judith and Dorit.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the guests, to Rami Ozeri and Emily Bilski and Dvora, Liss, and of course, Yona will speak tonight too. So Yona, thank you too. We are going to have a little bit longer session today as the usual because of the so many art we're going to show and curators that will present. Afterwards, we're going to start a conversation. We hope all of you are going to stay and can talk to the artists and the curators. So please stay tuned. And you can put your questions at the chat if you have them, and or keep them to the end of the session. So our first guest is Rami Ozeri, founder and director of the Jerusalem Biennale. Rami, I'm going to share my screen and you can tell us about the Jerusalem Biennale.
Okay, good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this session. So my name is Rami Ozeri, and I am very lucky to be the head of this small organization in Jerusalem. It's still quite small. We founded it in 2013 as a platform for what you can call contemporary Jewish art. You can call it contemporary art with Jewish content. You can call it Jewish art with contemporary feeling, or any combination will work. From my side, the point is the Jerusalem Biennale was founded in order to give artists that are active today, that has like an artwork today, give them the stage to exhibit contemporary art that has Jewish content. So the first Biennale was in 2013. It was received really beyond any expectation in any category. We had so many people that we did not expect. We had so many media coverage. I think people were waiting for this to happen in a way. And then ever since, we're growing quite fast. We had the 2015 Biennale was already much bigger in scale and much more international. In 2017, we made another step up. And then in 2019, we have reached some kind of, we got to some kind of a height. It was the largest Biennale ever, with a few really impressive international exhibitions. The title then was For Heaven's Sake, and we really aimed like high and grand. And then in a couple of months after the fourth edition of the Jerusalem Biennale ended, we started with COVID, and that changed a little bit the way we prepared for the Biennale and the way things turned up. I think they turned up like really nice, like in a good way. Things have changed, and the fifth edition of the Jerusalem Biennale was very different than the 2019 one. I can expand and I can say more about it, but you'll tell me the time frame.
Well, you have some time. I want to ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
Like, what is the biblical meaning of four cubits, and how is it relevant to our world today?
Okay, so the idea of 4 cubits was born as part of the experience of the corona, the isolation, the social distancing. Basically, a cubit is a measurement, it's a length, which is about 0.5 meter. And in Jewish tradition, I'm not sure if it's in the Bible, but I think more in the Mishnah and more, and then from there, there is a use of the term 4 cubits, and it's always about to symbolize a person's private space. So, for instance, there's a halacha that says that if you pray, other people should not get into your 4 cubits. That's your private space, and people should not go into it. And there's many other uses in halacha and in tradition in general for this term of 4 cubits. It always symbolizes the private space. And if you think about it, it's very simple, but it's also mind-blowing that this 0.5 meter, if you multiply it in 4 cubits, is exactly the 2 meters that we are required to keep distance from each other in the last events. So we thought it's a very interesting subject to start with as a title for Biennale 2021. And in a way, it was like saying our attentions were, let's keep it small, let's make it intimate, let's address all the issues that came up from those situations in which we are closed in our home, our own 4 cubits, and ask the question of how does art function in private spaces, and maybe also how does art reflect private spaces or intimate spaces.
Exactly, that my next question is kind of you partly answered, is how do you see the pandemic and emerging from quarantine expressed in the work?
Yeah, so I think the fact that we were all closed in our places more than usual created a lot of new creation. So some artists describe like a time of block, they couldn't work, they couldn't create anything new, but many artists describe like a stream of energy and a stream of urge to create new things, and then how to create those new artworks within the constraints of staying in a closed place or in a limited environment. And obviously all those works that refer to persons' private space, people that are closed in their rooms and using art in order to travel around the world, or using art in order to express their feelings about being closed, or new ways of communication that were created because of this situation. All of those came into expression in different exhibitions and different artworks. So this is one thing that is a major component of the Biennale 2021. It's group exhibitions, in a way like the model that we used in previous Biennales. We have a curator, we have a few artists that are joining in to address a subject, like a group exhibition, curated, and we place them in one of the historical venues around Jerusalem. So this is one part, but there are other 2 parts that bring into expression this subject that are very different, and we didn't have them in previous biennales. So the second part is, we call it phases, and I must give the credit to Emily Bilski, who is here, about this really brilliant name. So phases is basically private homes, art spaces, events. So what we did there is we said we're not only looking for artworks that were created from the private space and maybe present the private space, we're also asking, how does art function in private spaces? And we take artworks and we actually place them in private homes of artists, of curators, of collectors. And we invited the audience to come and share the art experience there. And then, part of it is asking what is different when you exhibit art, when you install art, when you share the art experience in your 4 Cubits, how is it different than our regular experience of sharing art in the public space or semi-public space? So this is the second part of the Biennale. We never had it. It was a great success. We had many, many interesting stories that were born there in those situations. And the third component, also something brand new that never was part of the Biennale, is a very large exhibition called Take Me Home. And that is exhibited in the main venue that you see on the screen, the historic building of Shaarei Tzedek in the center of Jerusalem. Basically, we asked artists to send us artworks that they think people will want to take home with them. And then we hanged it. It's more than 200 artworks in the building. It's really the largest exhibition we ever had. And we're asking the audience in the last 6 weeks and one more week to go to come and do the regular round, to see the artwork, to enjoy the artwork while it's there in the exhibition. But keep in mind that in the end of their tour, they will be asked, or they will be able to choose one artwork that they can actually take home with them. And that was like an attempt to create some kind of a change in the experience of going around a Biennale exhibition. So usually you go to a museum, a gallery, or Biennale, it doesn't matter, and you see the artworks, and I don't think it's part of your state of mind that this artwork can be in your living room. Maybe if you go to Art Basel or to, in Israel, Zevatari, or to a commercial gallery, that's your intention. But usually in most of the art experiences, that's not part of the experience. And in a way, we're kind of flirting with art fairs with this exhibition, trying to get maybe bridge the gap between commercial art and non-commercial art.
Okay, great. So I just put this slide because my next question is about, just in few words, if you can, Shaarei Tzedek. I guess people don't know what it was before, and about the curatorial direction, hosting exhibitions and artist studios at a hostel. As I visit there, I saw that there is a hostel there. Mm-hmm. So can you tell a little bit about Shaarei Tzedek?
Sure. So on the 27th of January, we will celebrate 120 years for this historic building that was one of the first hospitals in the Jewish part of Jerusalem, founded by Professor Wallach. And about 80 years, it functioned as a hospital. And you can't see it in the images that are on the screen now, but the heart of the building, the main space of the building, was chosen to be a synagogue. And this one, yeah, exactly. This is right, the first thing that you see when you enter, and it's really central and beautiful. And this will be our new gallery on a continuous all year, not only for the Biennale. And then about 80 years after the hospital was founded, it needed a bigger structure. So they moved to this industrial building in Beit Vagan, a bit far away from the center of Jerusalem. And the place was empty for a few years, and then it became the headquarters of Rashut HaShidur. It's like the national broadcast company of Israel. 15 or 20 years later, it was sold again to this developer. It's called Israel Canada. And now they are planning like huge plans for the place to build a hotel and 4 high rises around it. And in the meantime, until the plans will be approved, it is a place for art and culture. So that's about the Shaarei Tzedek. And you asked about the hostel. So the second floor of this building became a hostel. It's like rooms for rent for everybody, like groups or families or whoever wants to have like a very economical stay in Jerusalem, in the center of Jerusalem, can come and rent a room. And then in 2 cases that we wanted artists to invite us to their own 4 cubits, and it wasn't possible. What we did, we gave them rooms in this hostel and they created their own 4 cubits there. So in both cases of Mota Brim on one hand and Hanan Mazal on the other hand, the original idea was that they are part of phases. Remember, phases were going into the private space of the artist, but it wasn't possible from technical reasons. And then we gave them rooms upstairs, and that became really one of the highlights of the Biennale, because they made an amazing job in creating those spaces to look as if it's their studios, and in a way it was their studios for 2 months. And that was a part of the experience of visiting Shaarei Tzedek.
Thank you so much, Rami. This was really educating and interesting, and I hope you stay with us now. Before we move on, I would like to thank Yehudis Barmatz for the beautiful tour she gave me and a wonderful day traveling, watching most of the exhibitions of where the Jewish Art Salon members were presenting. So moving on, we have our next presenter is Dvoralis. Dvoralis is a curator at the Museum of Art in Ein Harod. I will stop sharing my screen, Dvora, and you can share your screen.
Hi, so I'm really so excited to be here. I have a long history with the Jewish Art Salon, and I think you guys are amazing and do such incredible, incredible work. Yona, you're one of my heroes. So we've together, with the salon, we've worked together. We've done exhibitions in the past 2 Biennale, the New York New Work and Helene Elan, Zichrona Livracha. So this year it was exciting to do something totally different, not with you guys. So my romance with Sari Srolovitz really began in 2018. I went to the Israel Museum and I was at this really incredible exhibition called New Designs for Jewish Ritual Objects, curated by Sharon Weiser Ferguson. And it really gave me an opportunity to see Judaica in a contemporary eye. And I was, really blown away by the show and blown away by this piece that we'll see in a second, that Sari Srolovitz, who is a artist, silversmith in the artist colony in Jerusalem, who I didn't know at the time. I was just blown away by her piece. And then 2 years later, the Anu Museum, which is the Museum of the Jewish People in Tel Aviv, they asked me to buy or acquisition works for the museum, and I came back to that piece. So I met Sari's piece before I met her, and of course, every time you meet an artist, it's a whole relationship, and I think we do, we've created this wonderful relationship. And she really is an exquisite artist. So first so I had the artist, and the space, as Rami said, in this building was this center space, which was a synagogue. Now, for me, this was crazy. It was 40 years that the synagogue had not functioned as a synagogue. There was no prayer there. There was nothing there. And all I could think about was what a synagogue that's a hospital. I mean, you're in your worst state possible, and you're going there for prayer. So it's just filled with all these prayers of these people who really, really needed, help. So I found, in general, I think that synagogues and hospitals is just a very interesting idea, and it was an abandoned synagogue. So, so they redid it. They redid the ceiling. They restored pieces of the wall, so you can see a little bit of the room. But basically, for 40 years, it's been used as a regular, meeting room for meetings. No Jewish, no nothing, no. So I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to take this amazing artist that I told you that I met in 2018 with a contemporary look of all these objects that were synagogue objects, whether it's Torah finials or Torah crowns or Torah shields, all these kinds of things, and bring that into this space, bring this kedusha, this holiness into this space. So this is the first piece that I'm showing you. This is the piece that we actually we bought for the Hana Museum, and I think it just says a lot of the story of this Judaic. As you can see, this is okay. So this is Sari's interpretation of Shabbat candlesticks, Shabbat besamim box, Havdalah holder, and a Kiddush cup. And the idea of she's taking reinterpreting silver Judaica ritual objects that we're used to out of the scraps that she had created from other objects, and telling this whole story of how Judaica is not only just a story of an object, but it's a story of a family and of a history. So if this is a besamim box on the left side, on the right side is an example of her mother's handkerchief. So she's reinterpreting that in this modern, contemporary, fine design in silver, embroidering the silver. So this was one of the pieces that I thought that Shabbat, even in the Hana Museum, if we were going to present Shabbat, I want it to somehow be suffused with all this memory and family and tradition that goes with Shabbat. Or this work is a mezuzah of Sari's, which, we touch a mezuzah, and it's just really our touch, those three hands, which also forms the letter of Shin, which is Shaddai, which is the name of God, which is the whole story of the mezuzah. So you can see that her work is just contemporary, geometric, fine, words that, we'll continue, we'll see. This is a Chanukiah, which is actually pretty well known, I think. This Chanukiah really is a play of aluminum. This one is in silver, aluminum and light, and how the light plays with on Hanukkah. Or this Kiddush cup, where there's a play, a Kiddush cup can be held either on the bottom in some communities or on the side. And so Sari's work is also, she recalls the tradition of what it was supposed to be for, the function of this cup. And this function was of a Kiddush cup. She talks about how her father held her Kiddush cup. So the works is beautiful, and each piece is absolutely gorgeous, but they also have this past or this tradition, and she's connected somehow to each piece. This is a washing cup. So we know that we take a washing cup and we have to, wash each of our hands. This is brass. So she uses different materials. This is a Havdalah set, and you can see this Havdalah set is for people from Edot HaMizrach that use, they go outside and they use the hadassim, the myrtle leaves, as opposed to the besamim of the Ashkenazim. And all this beautiful set. So she's relating to both traditions. And I think all her works relate to many different traditions. These are Torah shields, which also are hung there beautifully. So, there's a lot of tradition with Torah cases and different traditions, Ashkenazi and different Sephardi, but many of the Sephardi traditions is that women would take their scarves and they would wrap the tikim and they would give them as like gifts of love to this Torah. So she's kind of on that idea of incorporating the material and the silver. She's created this kind of Torah shield. Or this one, which is a beautiful Torah finials, Rimonim of Torah. So, I'm so used to, Rimonim. And what to me is so incredible is that it's the same Judaica of the function of the Judaica that I have in my collection from, 19th century Germany or Poland, of these two finials, but this is like one. It's kind of like a gate with these 18 straps around. You'll see within her work, she has a lot of stripes. In Judaism, there's a lot of stripes, whether it's a tefillin, whether it's talit, there's a lot of stripes, but here there are 18 forming this gate, this Sha'ar Shamayim, this entrance to this God entrance to the in the Aron Kodesh, in the synagogue. Or again, the stripes. This is the matzah plate where you just put the matzah on the table, and it's also, you know, beautiful with the skill and the tradition and the and I think she's investigating all these traditional forms that we have. We know what a matzah plate usually looks like. This one doesn't look like it, but it does look like a matzah. So she's taking that, you know, that form. So I keep talking about tradition. Her family comes from Azerbaijan, so she has a lot of the tradition of her community. I couldn't find a wedding plate from Azerbaijan, but this is actually in the collection of the Israel Museum. It's from Afghanistan, and it's like a big plate, an engagement plate, or which could be filled with, this is filled with sugar, but it could be filled with fruits, and it could be filled with henna, and brought as this, you know, marriage piece with a lot of music, and you can already feel the flavor and the color and everything. And then here we see how she interprets it into this engagement plate. So she still has the color and the threads, and we have the female forms inside inside the plate. So she's taken her pieces, which her original pieces were more functional, to a more you know, artistic, you know, higher kind of level, these pieces that she's done in the past few years. And those were in the center, we exhibited in the center of the synagogue. Or this one, this is my favorite. I keep telling her it's a showstopper. It's all done, first of all, so it's an engagement plate, like we saw, you know, like from the Afghanistan plate. And all the threads come from threads in her family carpet. You know, like the family carpet was the center place of where the family gathered, where all the sadness, happiness, everything is going on in this living room. And she has embroidered through this plate the forms that are in this carpet, with the threads coming down, which I love. Here's another example, like on the right side is a necklace of her mother that was her dowry, you know, and it was a gold necklace that her mother received. And you know how important for women this dowry was. And you can see how she reinterprets in an engagement candle, a wedding candle on the left side, the same kinds of forms, interpreting her mother's past and all the rich tradition of that community. This is a piece, Ayeka. It's actually in the Israel Museum, in their main Judaica exhibition. And Ayeka is a great word. It's for those of you who don't know, it's in Genesis when God is, you know, when Adam and Eve have eaten from the forbidden fruit, and God says, "Where are you?" And they're hiding from him. And that great question of Ayeka. This piece really speaks. I mean, also it's all you can see how it's all about that is not what's the subtraction of the material, and you see the material that she's kind of grinded all, and you can see the words in the floor of the material, but the subtraction. Where are you? It's all about of loss and what's not there, or where are you know. You can take it in many different ways. And this piece, you know, she's a silversmith, so you really don't assume that she does anything in, you know, other than silver. But this is a really amazing work. It's a chuppah, but it's a chuppah like memorial chuppah. It's built, it's made, it's sewn together with stone, Jerusalem stones, that we really put on a grave, and really in memory of her brother who died recently, and was very close to her. And a lot of the work, you can really sense that relationship and that loss. And this piece is hanging in the middle of the room. So we don't really see a chuppah as something, you know, connected to death. But here, this is kind of not hung horizontally, but hung vertically in this memorial piece.
Dvora, just a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm finished. So this is you can see the center of the room, and I hope you can feel the holiness in the room. But I love her work, and I'm very excited and happy that I had the opportunity to work with her. She's really an incredibly talented woman.
It's a beautiful exhibition, really. I was there and I felt the synagogue without knowing it was a synagogue in the past. It was just spiritual. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Welcome.
Judith.
Thank you, Dvora, for your wonderful insights and background on the superb work of Sari Srulovitz. I was not familiar with this work before, and I'm going to spend more time with it, and you did an excellent job. So we have so many artists to cover today. So as we look at the artists today, I would love it if you would put your questions in the chat. We're hoping to have time to discuss the work in greater detail. Many of the artists who are being presented today are present, and you can actually ask them questions. Excuse me. So as I said, I'm really not going to give these artists their due, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a sense of what this work is about as I understand it. So we'll start with Yehudis Barmatz Harris. And as you can see in the photo, her installation at Shaare Zedek included a video camera, and Dorit took a picture of herself and Yehudis as they were filmed in the installation and then reproduced on the wall of the installation on a monitor. So her piece really brings you into the work. So you're literally within the 4 cubits, right? And you're also within the bounds of a monitor, a computer monitor screen. Her piece is called Hush, and it's a rendition or an interpretation of the wonderful children's book, Goodnight Moon. And Yehudis usually uses very everyday domestic materials, like she uses dryer lint a lot, which is used in the mobile, but she's kind of reproducing and reinterpreting the images from that book. So she brings these very mundane things that we normally overlook into the realm of the personal and the spiritual and the creative. And she invites us into her world in that way. Let's go to the next one, please. Ken Goldman's work also often represents everyday objects, but he always presents them in an unconventional way. So for his installation, All Who Walk, he created sandals out of limestone. And he went from an interpretation in the Talmud by Rabbi Yamia that anyone who walks 4 amot in Israel earns his place in the world to come. So he created these limestone sandals to walk the 4 amot. And he performed this, as you can see on the right in a close-up of the collage that he made. He performed the act of walking 4 amot in these heavy limestone shoes, which brings so many references to mind, like walk a mile in my shoes, and feet of clay, which is the opposite, a person who isn't grounded. So it's a deceptively simple work. It's these 2 things, but then there's layers and layers of meaning behind it, which is how Ken works and why we enjoy his work so much. Next, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that both Yehudis and Ken are joining us today, and you are all welcome afterwards to ask questions if you like.
Indeed. The next artist is Beverly Jane Stewart, whose work is on the left. And this is so evocative of our quarantine and lockdown. It's called Locked In. It was done, this work was done during the quarantine, during the lockdown, 2021. And Beverly often uses architectural references and then places the figure within it. So there's a lot of historical, nostalgic elements and elements of memory, which also are elements that are present in the work of Judith Margolis on the right. And in her work, we get an emotional sense of what 4 cubits looks like when we're dreaming in our mind, and how the little space of our brain gets expanded into the world of dreams. And it's very mystical and magical work and very personal. And I don't want to say much about it because I think it speaks for itself. Let's go to the next, please. So Linda Lieff Altabeff created this large installation piece, sculpture called Squaring the Circle. And it's about making the ineffable tangible. So she was thinking about the relationship of the human body with geometry and taking a page out of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, the famous image of the man within the circle, the body, the human body as it relates to geometry. So this is really sacred geometry. And she's relating this to the concept of the Arba Amot, the idea that symbolizes a person's private domain. And she's combined the ancient concept of sacred geometry with the idea of that which defines a personal space. And I think I just want to point out that it's interesting that all of these works of art about personal space are presented in a space that was used for people to come together in the most public way. As Dvora pointed out, both a synagogue and a hospital, which Shaarei Tzedek was both of those things, is a place where people come for help. But it's also the public domain, the public sphere. And here we are each in our own private domains, communicating in the public domain through the internet about things that are both public and private. Now, the piece on the right is by Cheslin Amato. And she uses light to convey the idea of 4 kinds of cubit: personal, social, public, divine. And color and different parts of the spectrum also represent different modes of being and of space. And she says that the work is intended as an affirmation of the greatest possibility of and for humanity, and all that is the light above, holding all possibility, unformed and spectacular, and the light below, the archetypal potentiality of formation, creation, and manifestation, the first shaping. So obviously what comes to mind is the Ten Sefirot of the Kabbalah, and in a sense, she's creating a diagram, a new diagram of an ancient diagram, which is using light. Next, please. The next work is by Ruth Schreiber, and Ruth often also relates to the human body. A lot of her work is reimagined clothing. It involves nostalgia and memory and emotion. And here she's using silhouettes of people, of men and women, to bring up the issue of reproduction in our world and how it's really throwing up a lot of new challenges for us as the human race, and also in terms of halakha, because halachically a child is defined as the product of a man and a woman. Well, it's not such a simple definition in the world of in vitro fertilization and many other things. So she's really bringing up a lot of provocative questions. And of course, when you think about personal space versus public space in terms of reproduction, you get involved in the legal aspects and the idea of controlling women's bodies and who has the right to say what is private, what is public. So all of this is represented in her work so richly. As she wrote in her statement, she heard a world-class expert, Rabbi Avraham Steinberg, an expert in Jewish medical ethics, comment on this. And he said how complex it is nowadays to define mother and father. Let's go to the next, please. Mayan is dealing with the feeling of Corona, life during Corona. She said that it has made us numb, withdrawn, a glimmer of ourselves. And this abrupt shift in our vibrant lives during Corona has permeated into every aspect of our lives. So she made 8 assemblage paintings to serve as a statement, testifying to our transformative world, illuminating the importance of the emotional, spiritual, and collective memory, and forcing us to look into the mirror, asking, is this the life? Is the life that we knew lost forever, and where do we go from here? Ruth Kestenbaum Ben Dov is the artist that created the oil painting on the left, which I think is just a fascinating idea of space, because here we are like on the shoulders of this person on a tightrope hovering over perhaps the earth from many miles up. And it looks like Israel, I think, as seen looking towards the south is at the top. Looks like the Sea of Galilee is at the top, at the bottom, and the Dead Sea's at the top, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But she gives us really the drone or the even the satellite's eye view, which is a different way of looking at the little spaces that we occupy on this earth. We have Esther Zeibel, who did a self-portrait in isolation. She really conveys her tone with the blue color. Selena Rochani did a portrait of the Rebbe's embrace, which I guess is really kind of a feeling of comfort and of not being alone in this time of being alone. So that's another expression of how we find communities within the people that we cherish and our mentors. Judith Appleton is expressing the landscape of Israel with this beautiful oil painting on wood on the right. Next, please. Now, I did notice that Mel Brown is in the audience today. I think Hetty's here too. So again, later on, if you have questions, you can ask them. Mel's work on the left is dealing with calligraphy as an expressive form. And he says that he's intentionally painting in a non-representational abstract way, which is a form of visual abstract midrash. So as a calligrapher myself, I can really appreciate the beauty, both the beauty and form of the letters and the meaning. So you have that dual activity going on. We appreciate the letter forms as images, but then we appreciate the meaning of them. Excuse me. And here, in some way, he's obscured the letters to the point where they can't really be read. So we sort of have to make up our own interpretation. We can read them individually, but they don't really read as sentences. And now on the right, we have a really different work from Hetty Brewer Abramowitz. It's a very complex work, and I'm going to try to sum it up for you in a way that makes sense. Kol HaOt Gallery offered an art challenge to concretize one of the 48 ways to Torah in the ethics of the fathers, the Pirkei Avot. And she chose a single one, which was number 39. One who shares in the bearing of a burden with their colleague. That's an avenue to Torah. So she has this box, and within the box is a portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she obviously shared the burden. She shared the burden of law and interpreting law with her colleagues. And on the left side, she shows us women who are in the Israeli army. And obviously they share the burden of the nation, of protecting the nation of Israel. So she titles this The Book of Shared Burdens. And it's interesting because the format of having a box and having to open the box to find these treasures, really, these women are treasures to their nations. And I think that's an interesting thing, the way they're presented within the box. It makes them all the more appear all the more precious. And also it gives us a sort of a feeling of peering into an intimate space, a private space. It's like looking into a book, but even more so. Okay, I think we are ready for our next presenter, curator Emily Bilski. We're so happy to have you. So please unmute yourself and get ready to share your screen and talk.
I'm going to share my screen. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to present our exhibition, The House is in the Book, which is an exhibition highlighting the artist books of 3 amazing artists. I'm sure they're well known to all of you, or certainly most of you. Andi Arnovitz, who works in Jerusalem, Lynn Avadenka, who is located just outside Detroit in the US, and Mirta Kupferminc in Buenos Aires in Argentina. This project is being exhibited at the Jerusalem Print Workshop. It's an amazing location for us. I'm going to show you some installation shots. It has incredible architecture, though it was a bit of a challenge to exhibit within this space. The germ of the idea for this show actually came from Andi Arnovitz a couple of years ago. Right after the last Biennale, she called me and we started talking, and she said, I think for the next Biennale, it would be great to do an exhibition of artists' books by women. And she mentioned Lynn and Mirta and herself, and let's start thinking about that. So I was immediately on board. It was a really exciting idea. And I started thinking about some other artists, but then COVID happened. So we were sort of back to this core group. I should say that the three artists, as you may know, have very, very different styles, but they share a number of incredible qualities. One is they are all three master printmakers. They work in other media as well, but they all have an incredible repertoire of printmaking techniques. They all do artists' books, and they all have been interested in expanding what an artist's book can be in terms of format. And you'll see that here, for example, this is these sequence of really three-dimensional works, which are books and also sculptures. You can see here just a little bit. I'm going to show you, some of the example from each artist to get an idea what we were talking about. They also have engaged very much with poetry. For example, this screen is a work by Lenore based on the poems of the iconic Israeli poet, Rachel. Okay, but then COVID happened, and Rami announced the subject of the Biennale, Four Cubits, and we started thinking, okay, what are we going to do? It was really a challenge. We didn't even know actually if the Biennale would be able to take place entirely in a physical form. We were talking about possible virtual Biennale. Things were so up in the air. And that was really the germ of the idea for this quite unique collaboration. The result is an artist's book called The House is in the Book, Collaboration and Isolation. And that is really the centerpiece of the exhibition. And you can see it here, the way it's installed at the Jerusalem Print Workshop, which is that all of the folios have been hinged together and they take up an entire long wall of the exhibition. So in order to develop this project, the four of us met on Zoom for over a year, at least every 2 weeks, and endless emails and WhatsApp and everything else. Here you can see the four of us, plus where it says Dante, that's actually Mariana, who is an animator, and I'll talk about her participation a little bit later. So the subject of those conversations was what kind of book it should be, what the themes should be, inspired, of course, by the idea of 4 cubits, but also by the format of the book, or I would say more than that, even the concept of the book, why books are important, and also how their meaning or their function was beginning to change for a lot of us in the course of the pandemic. So here you can see each artist working in her studio. And that's just important to stress, which is that the conversations were joint. Part of the process involved the artists creating a lexicon of shared images, which would form a kind of through thread through the entire work. From this lexicon, there were several that everybody used, though of course they're very different in each set of works. One of the other really important things to discuss was very, really tachlis kinds of decisions. What should the format be? How big should the book be? How many folios? In the end, we decided each artist would create 4 folios. Again, that's inspired to some degree by the 4 cubits, but also very, very technical issues like what kind of paper? What should the weight be? What should the specific color be? And this was complicated by the fact that not everything was available in every location. Each artist had to discover like what could she get in her city in her country. And given the supply issues and the challenges of COVID, that wasn't always so easy. And ultimately, each artist printed in her own city. And then the challenge was to actually bring these works together in Jerusalem to exhibit them together. Here is the book in its final form. As I said, everything was printed in each city. The boxes were made in Buenos Aires. The title of the work is taken from a poem by Edmond Jabez. I mentioned that each artist is really engaged in her oeuvre a lot with the work of poets. And this is the title comes from a few lines in this poem from Jabez at the threshold of the book. Jabez wrote a lot about the book and about its meaning. And of course, he was a very influential Jewish poet who also engaged a great deal with Jewish themes. This was the phrase that really jumped out at us. There is a lamp on my table and the house is in the book, so I will live in the house after all. Again, particularly resonant lines in the context of COVID. So here you can see the book in the box, more or less. I just wanted to show you a little bit about this idea about the motifs and the kinds of motifs that were chosen ranged from celestial and terrestrial maps, land allocation diagrams such as this, a lot of images having to do with measuring tools, but also people measuring. And also you can see here, I just took 3 folios where you see the same motif of a house, and the text from which the house is created comes from the Tractate of Eruvin. It's here, and again, it's here. So of course, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Text in the Talmud that deals with the Eruv, which is another way of delineating space in Judaism, personal space. So I'm not going to go into the notion of Arba Amot because Rami already explained that so well. Just to say that the notion of space is really central to this work, and the ways in which personal space, again, the Arba Amot, but also civic space, the way that our experiences of a public space were so transformed during lockdown, and they continue to be transformed as the pandemic goes through these new phases. And finally, global space, because we were in this paradoxical situation where despite the fact that everybody, or those who were lucky enough actually to be able to stay at home and be safe in lockdown, at the same time, globally, we were sharing these experiences, we were connecting in new ways. And so all of these issues, private space, civic space, global space, find expression in these pages. Here you can just see a little bit more clearly each of these images. So this one is Andi Arnovitz. This is Lynn Avadenka. Also, you can see how each artist, in addition to using the same themes, and of course having using similar motifs, sharing the motifs, they also took it in their own direction. So Lynn, for example, really riffed on all of these themes about 4. So here, for example, she references the 4 matriarchs and the 4 directions, as well as along the bottom. Along the bottom, she deals also with the notion of quarantine coming from 40 and the etymology of that term. So there's a tremendous amount of layering, of meaning, of images throughout these works. And here Mirta's intimate space, where she actually takes the text from Amos Oz's memoir, where he describes the very tiny apartment that he grew up in. And from that text, she created this intimate space in a collage, which she then reproduced in this particular folio. Okay, here you see again, you can see a little bit how they all fit together. And finally, after the book was completed, we worked with an animator, a video artist in Buenos Aires, to create a video which uses the individual images but mixes them together. So it's a collaborative work, but it's not an exquisite corpse. Each artist worked in her studio, printed in her city, and in Jerusalem, when they were all eventually landed here, they were put together for the first time. But they didn't work on one another's sheets. The video functions a little bit differently because the images are brought together. Here you can see, again, the credits for Mariana Sosnovsky, who did the audiovisual design, and an amazing original soundtrack by Ernesto Romeo. So those of you who are in Jerusalem, I hope you come and see and watch the video. And then I just want to end with this image, which was on the invitation, which is the 4th folio and Andi Arnovitz's last folio. Because she, if you can see over here, she collaged in a small book. And this is an image actually, which is taken from a interwar encyclopedia, and it's actually two gymnasts on a beach, kind of reaching out to each other. But she places this tiny book, and it's a physical object, which connects them. And that was very much the thinking behind this idea about the book and Four Cubits and during this period of the pandemic, because a book, among many other things, is distinguished by the fact that it is a haptic object. It's tactile. In order to engage with it, you don't only look at it, you have to pick it up, you touch it, you turn the pages. So that's the physical aspect. And it also is really a meeting place. It's a platform for interactions between authors and readers, between writers and artists, between translators and authors, and also all of the different people who have to touch a book in order to have it come into the hand of the reader. And that is an aspect which is really brought out in this image as the book which literally connects us. So thank you so much for your attention.
Emily, thank you so much for interpreting this work for us. We usually hear directly from the artist, but hearing you and Dvora and also Rami and all of the insights that you bring to the staging of this work, to the conceptualizing of it, is just a treasure for us. So thank you very much. I would like now to pass the mic to the director of the Jewish Art Salon, Yona Verwer, who's going to discuss this wonderful exhibit that includes Jewish Art Salon artist Lenore Mizrachi-Cohen and Hana Mehtali, two artists who were dealing with calligraphy, and I'll leave it to you, Yona, to talk about it.
Thanks, Judith. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you, Judith and Dorit, for organizing and curating these sessions. I should have mentioned it in the beginning. And I want to thank Cheselyn and Hana for being part of the team as well. So this exhibition is called Maktub, and it was organized and conceived and curated by Jewish Art Salon member Lenore Mizrachi-Cohen. She is on this meeting, so she'll hopefully chime in with a few tidbits. Okay, so I personally am very excited about this because this exhibition is a collaboration between artists from Israel and artists from the United Arab Emirates. So two totally different cultures. And we at the Salon are also in the process of organizing two large exhibitions that involve artists of many different cultures. So anyway, this exhibition here, you see Lenore Mizrachi-Cohen. She is an artist who lived in Brooklyn most of her life. She's from the Syrian Jewish community and made Aliyah, I think about 2 years ago, to Jerusalem. You can move on to the next one. So for her, living in Brooklyn as a Syrian Jew, the Arab script and Arab language were very important to her. And she was always enchanted by how visually the Arab script looked more interesting to her. By the way, at the bottom, you see a photo of Rami on the side and the artist who could actually be there physically. So her co-curator is Hana Mehtali. Hana is from a Moroccan-born Muslim, and she lives in Dubai. And interestingly, Hana was always interested in the Hebrew calligraphy. So in a way, let's move to the next one. So in a way, they kind of make mirror images conceptually of each other. So this is the opening reception. So following the Abraham Accords, it was Lenore who reached out to Hana with the idea of a collaboration. And it was the first grassroots cultural exchange initiative between these two countries. Next. So these are the sponsors, the British Embassy, and speakers included the British Ambassador, the Jerusalem Deputy Mayor, and of course, Biennale Director Rami Ozeri and the show curators. Next. So here we get to the actual artwork, and Lenore, at any moment you want to chime in and say something, please do. Lenore had said in one interview, both of our cultures venerate the written word. So I wanted to give exposure to artists who are not only very skilled, but also doing interesting, creative, and dynamic work and new things with both script. So this is work by Hana Mehtali, one of the two curators. Next. So these are artworks I know nothing about except that they're gorgeous.
Wait, I'll chime in just for a minute, only because it's nice to give context. And thank you for preparing the talk about our show. I so regretted that I didn't have time to do that this week, and you are making us shine. So thank you, Yona. These two works are, the pyramid shape one is by Dia Alam, which is one of the most well-known calligraphy artists in Dubai. And the one put in the form of a horse is from a Palestinian Israeli artist, Saeed Al-Nahri, who teaches calligraphy here in Jerusalem. And I just, part of what was interesting on the wall was to see who's working in what language. It's not always what you would expect, people from each country. And one thing I would want to say about the bringing together of all of these artists is, you know, Yona opened with that it's two totally different cultures, but what we kind of hope to highlight with bringing together people's works in both languages was that they're actually not that different. And especially people who focus on the written word and calligraphy, and the alphabet is very similar and the words are similar, but also the people. So it was something that came through in the work. You could go to the next one. Oh, these are by me. So I'll just say a quick word about them. This one called No is the Arabic word for no, actually scripted and cut out of paper. And the paper was like very thick and it was curling up and making almost sculptural shapes as I was cutting it for use in another artwork. A lot of my artwork uses cut paper words. And I did a whole series of photographs just based on posing these letters almost as if they were subjects. And that was one of my favorites that came out. This other blue one is part of an ongoing project that I have now where, inspired by the whole Corona period, I picked words that specifically talk about worries and burdens, pressures, cares, and in Arabic took the same word, repeated it, and formed the heads of flowers out of these words. And what you're seeing here is almost, the process involves designing and scripting the flower and then cutting it out of the paper and then spray painting this actual flower that I've created. So each one is this bright different color, and I weave them with wire and I put them in a bouquet so that we have in the end a gathered bouquet of burdens. And so this that you're seeing that we displayed in Maktub was almost the negative space left behind when I sprayed one of the flowers. I realized that even the background of the spray makes a whole different artwork in of itself. That's just appreciating the letters for their beauty. And that's some of the work that I chose to include in the show, just because I think it's a common universal theme to everybody right now and aesthetically fits very well with the rest of the work in the show. You can go next. This is work by David Goldstein. He's a Tel Aviv-based graphic designer and artist. Besides for just being extremely talented, and I was proud and happy to be able to have a forum to show his work, again, there's this idea of the commonality between styles in Arabic and Hebrew. You can see clearly the influence of Arabic lettering and script in his Yerushalayim piece in the top left corner. You can go next. These works are by, on the top left is by Tawfiq Zakaria. He made headlines recently because he's based in Dubai and he's Muslim, but he works almost primarily in Hebrew scripted works. As of yet, the work that he showed me in Hebrew, it was getting there, but it wasn't his best yet. So I wanted to include him at his best, and so I chose one of his Arabic works. But again, just an interesting name to know of and follow, because he's doing interesting, innovative, different things with a script that is in his native language, specifically Hebrew, and I think that's really interesting to everybody for a lot of reasons. Izzy Pludwinsky, one of the foremost calligraphers working in Israel right now in any language. Again, proud to show some of his work. And Itamar Heifetz, another Tel Aviv-based artist. And again, we're trying to not only just show works that use calligraphy, but works that turn the calligraphy into artwork in and of themselves, because again, it's exploring what letters and calligraphy can do, and not only just using calligraphy. Calligraphy is the work. You can go next. Dorit, did you have other slides on the artwork?
No, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you just arrived and talk about this exhibit and calligraphy and a collaboration with Muslim calligraphy. It's amazing. I think it's put an extra spice to all this exhibit. So thank you so much, and thank you, Yona, very much. And I would like now to invite all of you to the conversation. We still have some time for this, and this should be very nice. So please join us.
I had a question. Actually, somebody mentioned the video. Are any of the videos that were talked about? I think Dvora talked about a video, and also actually Emily did as well. Can those be seen anywhere? So these questions are for Emily and Dvora.
Oh, I'll start. The video is at the moment, it's in the exhibition. It was premiered there, and so for now it's been shown there exclusively. Once the Biennale closes, however, and we've been discussing how to make it available more widely on the internet, whether it's on the artist websites or so. It certainly will be available.
Oh, that's great, and that's something that we may be able to screen within the purview of this program too.
There is a video that kind of documents Sari's doing her chuppah with the stones, if you remember from Dvora's presentation, this beautiful chuppah with the stones. So we did document this, and it's part of another installation which is placed in the entrance to the Shaare Tzedek. So we can share this probably.
That would be great. And I'm sorry, I sort of misremembered, but this has been a lot of stuff flying at us really fast. Thank you, Rami. Appreciate it. I'm just looking at the chat to see if people have questions.
Richard is raising his hand. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Rami, your kids are great. Wow. Anyway, hello, everybody. But wow, what a wonderful presentation. Just referring to one of the things that Rami said in terms of shaping the whole exhibition, just as an aside, the distinction from to take works that are seen primarily in a private space and then putting them into a public space. We have an unexpected example of that here in New York. Not having to do with Jewish art, but having to do with world famous art, and that is the Frick collection. The Frick collection, which of course is in the private home. It's now up into the public, but it was the private home of Henry Clay Frick. And anyone who knows New York, has been to New York, probably has been there. It feels like you're in a home, even though it's a museum-like home. It is now, though, in a place called the Met Breuer, which is a purely institutional museum setting. And all of the works, which I've lived with my entire adult life, look radically different in that setting. Not only are they lit differently, but also, again, because they're not in this place that was a home. So that kind of dynamic you actually can see in New York on a different scale, but it's a fascinating change of context that I think was very important, that what you did with that in terms of this show. Just one other thing, as you started your introduction, the thing that jumped to mind was, okay, so Arbor Cubits, you know, the 4 Cubits, what about the next biennial as being Rishus Harabim, the public space? I don't know how you'll go with it, but it really, since this you've really developed so beautifully as a concept, private and as a concept, we also remember as artists really do live in public spaces, for what it's worth.
Well, I think that's a great idea. We haven't started discussing the next year's theme yet. I think, you know, we kind of need to wait until we see how things develop. I must say that the announcement of the last Biennale was very late in the process. We announced it in December 2020. It was about 11 months before the Biennale actually started, while in previous Biennales, we did it 18 or 20 months ahead. So I think it's time of like a bit uncertainties, and we're like not sure, but it's interesting because many of the organizations here in Israel response to COVID was to go out to the open space, like really to the streets and to the parks and to like open air place. And we took it in a way to the other direction and went into the 4 Cubits, into the intimate, into the private. And the Reshut Harabim is a wonderful concept. I will keep it in mind. I don't know what's going to be.
Well, we look forward to hearing from you. And one of our artists, one of the Jewish Art Salon artists, Leah Robb, has done a very extensive series, you've probably seen it, of Jews in public spaces carrying out ritual acts and, you know, praying and doing all the things that they used to do in Shul out on the street. So we have a great series of documentation of that from Leah. So I'd just like to see if anybody else has any final questions. It's a lot. We have a lot of people here, and a lot of the artists are here. I just want to thank Rami and Dvoralis and Emily Bilski and Yona Verwer for presenting today, and also Lenore Mizrachi-Cohen and all of the artists who were able to attend. I am so excited that I was able to, in a way, attend the Jerusalem Biennale, because I've never been able to do that in person. So I was very excited for this program, and I really want to thank you so much. Our next program is going to be January 30th, 2022, and we will feature the art exhibit Holy Sparks, which will be at the Bernard Heller Museum at the Hebrew Union College, and it includes many members of the Jewish Art Salon. So we're going to bring you on a tour of that exhibit and work with the HUC curators on that. I just want to say happy secular New Year to everybody. I hope the year brings health and openness and freedom for all of us. But in the meantime, it's great to connect with you in this way. So happy New Year.
Judith?
Yes.
Judith, I was wondering if maybe the artists who are still on the call maybe would like to say something, you know, even though no questions were asked, if there's anything they wanted to add.
Wonderful.
Right, maybe Yehudis is still here talking about her installation. Yehudis?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I just wanted to add that part of the importance of the installation was actually going and sitting in the room and enjoying the quiet, something which is a little hard to give over from just the pictures themselves. And I hope I could turn the recording that happened on the video screen into something that I could share in the future, to give over a little bit of what the experience was to sit in a quiet room and soak in the memories of the walls of the building.
Well, if you do, let us know.
Yehudis, you just, hi. So when I've been at the installation, actually in your installation, it was like being part of it because of the video that was on all the time. And you told me that it's recording all the people that coming into the installation. Actually, it's like a civilian camera. So I don't know. I love to see that too, you know. It's like a secret, you don't know what people talk about. And I think it was a great installation.
Yeah, there's definitely something a little voyeuristic about it recording. But it's also about having people become part of the exhibit and not only experiencing it, but being also a part of it.
You also used some parts that were left behind at the Shaarei Tzedek, so you created this piece. Can you say something about that?
Well, it's a site-specific exhibit using a room and all parts of the room as an artistic space.
Cool, thank you.
First of all, I like seeing my piece behind all of you in the background behind you. Used it to form the backdrop, you, Yona, and so that's nice to see my sculpture there. So thank you. But I also want to just thank Rami for giving all of us the opportunity to show our work. He's really like transformed. It was, you know, not that much was going on, and having all these exhibits and activities and performances has enlivened the whole art scene in Jerusalem because of this initiative. So I really call a kavod to Rami for all of your efforts to make this happen, because it was really
absolutely
Bravo,
not an easy thing.
Bravo, Rami. All of you. Fantastic.
Well, I really want to just thank the artists, because every year it's you know, it's hard. Everyone here knows how hard it is to create an exhibition, and if you multiply it in 30, it's even harder, you can guess. And every year it's hard, and this year it was even harder because of the situation. And I feel like there were miracles, and the miracles were not because we were counting on the miracles. You're not supposed to count on the miracle, but if you work hard enough, it might happen. And I feel it wasn't me, it was like 300 artists that really brought their energies, their souls, their time, their efforts, their creativity, and made it all happen. And in a strange way, we had like a lot of siyata dishmaya, and things came into place. And I feel like this Biennale was, with all the constraints and with all the difficult situations, it was continuing our growth and our development of the Jerusalem Biennale, and became again the best Biennale we ever had. So it was really surprising, but we made it.
Great. Elizabeth is having a question, is raising her hand. And
yes,
then,
hi. It's not a question. It's really a comment circling back to the location and space, that, you know, a hospital is a place of healing, and a synagogue is also, it's this place of spiritual healing. It can be, and art really is a place of healing, and it's a great tie-in. And thank you for giving us the art over Zoom and giving us a space to connect and heal and be together spiritually and physically, even though we're not together. Thanks so much.
you're welcome. Ruth, nice to see you again.
Hi, Dorit. Hi, everyone. You're winding down, but I just thought it'd be interesting for those of you who haven't been here in Jerusalem. I just wanted to share with you that I have my exhibition still in the hall in my local synagogue. And that was something that Rami and I, between us, reckoned that was another way of thinking of a private space or a home space. Those of you who are in Jerusalem, this is the last week, come in and see it. But I just thought you'd be interested to hear that.
Thank you. That's great information.
I'm going to be preparing a video of the exhibition, and I'll share it with Yona. So maybe you'll get to see it second best that way.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Hi there.
you.
Mel, go ahead.
I just want to chime in. Thanks to Rami. For those of you who, I was honored to be able to participate a little bit, but it's a tremendous thrill to be there and to go around and see Jerusalem in a whole different way than I've ever done it before. You meet artists, you go to different venues. So it's a combination of seeing wonderful art, seeing the art community. But Rami, you did an amazing job, and you were away from your little kids a lot, I suspect, for a while. So it's great to see you, and it was truly wonderful to sneak in that brief window to go to Jerusalem, to be there. So I thank you, and if you haven't been there, it's a great way to go to Israel and experience Israel, Jerusalem on many different levels. But thanks again.
I think that's a great point. And we tend to think of, Jerusalem's a holy city, so we tend to visit all the ancient things, but you're really bringing it into the 21st century and helping the world understand that this is a place where people are living contemporary lives and thinking in very modern ways. So it's fascinating, that contrast.
Without giving up the holiness. And I think maybe that's the great chidush of the Biennale, because I don't think art must leave out the holiness or the tradition or the past in order to be contemporary, the other way. I think the more we connect to roots and sacred places and sacred spaces, the art is better, like to elevate our lives.
Well, like you said, not only was it, you had this beautiful exhibit in the Tower of David, the jewelry exhibit between the Turkish and the Israeli artists, which was incredible, both in the site, in the old city. So again, a great different way to combine the contemporary with the holy too. Yeah, beautiful.
I'd like to add something to that, because this may or may not have been Rami's intention, although I think it probably was. But the Biennale has also become a place for all these artists to meet each other and to really become a community. Like some of the people on the call I would not have met earlier, and now we're friends, like Ruth Schreiber, I'm looking at you right now on the screen with, and many others. So that is so important to me. It has given me such a connection to Israel. Like Dorit, I met her, at one of the Biennales as well. To me, that is like just as good, Rami, those connections, that these exchanges give us, Americans or from other parts of the world, such a strong connection with Israel, I think. And people always say, like, how can we connect American Jews more to Israel? Well, you are doing it, Rami, so, and in the best possible way. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad for this, and I cherish the opportunities to meet artists from all over, not only the US, but this year it was less international than in the past, but definitely it's an inherent part of the Biennale. It needs to be international, and I really hope that we will be able to collaborate again like we did in past Biennales with the Jewish Art Salon. I think you're doing an amazing job in creating a place for artists that has like the same interests to meet each other, and in this way we're partners, and we should keep on doing stuff together.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Sure.
Zach,
And you
Zach,
did
I missed something.
saying that there is one more week to see the more exhibitions in the Biennale. So how you did, Judith?
Okay, so if the travel restrictions open up, you can just hop on a plane and come see it before it's gone.
Does anybody else, any of the artists who are included, have anything they want to add? Judith Appleton, just unmute, please. Go ahead.
I go to a lot of exhibits every week, and I'm still astounded that there's so many more of the exhibits in the Biennale that I just didn't get to, and I'm located very centrally, but this time there was a richness of exhibits in all different kind of places, and it was amazing. And as Linda said, more action than there was in Jerusalem in a long time, which is great. I was so proud to participate. It was wonderful. It was so exciting. It was lots of people, amazing. Thank you for also showing my landscape tonight.
It's a pleasure. Well, I think of Jerusalem with all this art as being like a menorah lit up, a really bright spot in the world right now. So thanks for shining that light on us. and sharing it with us. And Dorit, I think we should probably wrap this up. What do you think?
Right. Thank you so much, everybody. I really enjoyed it.
And we'll see you hopefully on
Thank you.
January 30th for the exhibit about Holy Sparks at the
Holy
same
Spark.
time, noon.
Don't miss Holy Spark. It's really an amazing exhibit of 50 years of women rabbis, reform, of course, in the United States, and women artists that were matched a rabbi and created a piece of art. So don't miss that great artist there.
Until we meet again.